Welcome. I am Natalie Lucier, founder of AccessAlly, and I am honored today to have Oli Gardner from Be The Keynote and co-founder of Unbounce here with us today, talking about how to make your presentation more memorable and just all kinds of great tips on public speaking. So you definitely want to be here and pay attention to this. It's going to be incredible. So welcome, Oli. I am super pumped to have you here.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for doing this. This is gonna be a lot of fun. I like that
Yes.
it's live.
For sure. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is essentially your story and how you got into more of the public speaking side of things. And I think a lot of times when we want to do more speaking, we think, oh,
Yeah.
someone like Ollie is an expert. He's done it so many times. It must come so easy for him. Did it start off easy for you, or how did that start?
It didn't. I mean, it all kind of began with I used to, when we started Unbounce, I was the marketing person, so I did a lot of writing, and it was good. It was funny, opinionated kind of stuff. So that caught people's attention. So they started asking me to speak, which is often the way. As soon as you have some position of leadership in terms of your content, that's when people reach out. But I was terrified, so like everybody is. So I was like, nope, no way, not going to do that ever. So I said no for about 5 years. I just kept saying no because I was just so terrified. And eventually, then I did a webinar, and then I did some voiceover stuff for a course we were doing. I was getting a little more confident. Joanna Weeb from Copy Hackers got me to do like a 10-minute video with like a flip chart, for a startup cohort she was doing. That was my first time in front of the camera, and I was like, okay, it's okay, it's not bad. And then eventually I had my arm twisted by someone on the team because there was a event in Austin, and it wasn't an actual keynote like solo. It was a panel of 3 people critiquing landing pages, which I've been doing for years. So I was like, okay, I can do that. Then at the last minute, I'm talking with the guys on the panel. I'm like, how are we going to do this? We can't just tear into these people's pages because they were there in the room without at least demonstrating that we know what we're talking about. And they're like, I don't know, what do we do? I'm like, how about I give like a 7-minute intro just to tee up some principles? What am I doing? Shooting myself in the face. But then I just obsessed over that, worked on it really hard, practiced it 50 times, and gave that presentation. And I won an award for best presentation out of 64 speakers. So I was like, okay, I'm still terrified, but maybe this is where I belong. And, then I kind of worked on getting over that fear. But it took a while.
That's incredible. And I think a lot of us can definitely relate to that because we see people on the stage and we're like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to be able to do these amazing presentations. And, they must have
Mm-hmm.
something I don't have. And I think that's kind of that imposter syndrome that we all kind of have
Yeah.
when we're starting out. So, what are some tips or things that you've learned along the way to kind of get over some of those internal stories that we have that we're not good enough or, we don't have what it takes to be good speakers?
Yeah, it's a great question that people kind of need to understand. And imposter syndrome, I mean, people might know what it is by definition. It's like a not really believing in yourself, feeling like you're a fraud, or like, why do I belong? Why should I have a position of authority, or why should people listen to me? But it's a little bit deeper than that, and it's a little bit sinister. Imposter syndrome kind of came about in 1978. It was a couple of doctors who created this concept as a diagnosis. It wasn't just a feeling people had, it was a diagnosis, and they primarily targeted women in the business setting. But it's important to know that imposter syndrome is not about the person. It's about the work environment that's created that. If you think about the fact that a lot of white men have positions of authority in companies, and it's overwhelmingly so. And so they have lots of peers to look to, successful people that look and appear like them. So they have a sense of confidence because of that peer support. Now, it's important to know that confidence doesn't equal competence. And because, say, women in the workforce, especially POC, they have way fewer peers and role models. So that's where some of that self-doubt can creep in. And it's not about the person. It's about the work environment that has created that. So it's a bit more of a systemic thing. I recommend everybody watch a talk by Tiffany De Silva. It's called Confessions of a Marketing Fraud. It is all about this, overcoming it. She will do a much better job of describing how to overcome this than I could. It's absolutely fantastic. And stick with the video, because after about halfway through, I guarantee you will cheer up at least once. It's fantastic. But to your point about, speakers, they must be so great. And she did an exercise with the audience where she got them to stand up if they identified with a yes to a question, like, do you think that your position is partly due to luck, or that you're in the right place at the right time, or do you ever think you're not good enough? So people are standing up and have to stay standing up. So pretty much everybody is standing up. Then she did one brilliant thing. She said, okay, now all the speakers in the room, raise your hand. They were all standing up. Right? So they all had these same feelings. They're just like everybody else. They've just progressed to doing this other thing, but they still feel that way. So that's a good thing just to remember, that it's not just you, it's kind of everyone.
100%. Yes, those feelings don't go away. I can definitely relate to that for sure. So thank you for sharing that. Also, thank you for sharing the systemic side of things. I think that that is huge. And a lot of times we think it's our own fault why we're not, better or doing certain things, but we just don't have those models, and we just don't have that those opportunities sometimes to practice the things that we know we could do well. So thank you for sharing that. So one of the things that you mentioned, obviously you practice a lot for your presentation that you won for best presentation. So when it comes to doing like online presentations and webinars and things like that, how do you approach that kind of presentation? And how do you practice online with someone else watching you? Like, what are some tips that you could share for doing a great presentation online, like a webinar, for example?
I definitely don't do it with someone else watching. I am an ambivert, like I'm an extrovert when I'm on stage, a big stage. I'm terrified in a small room. I don't like speaking to a few people, or that's what scares me. 6,000 people, amazing. Little room, not so much. But one of the key things you have to do is practice in the environment you're going to use. So we're using Zoom. So you want to set it up so you can see yourself and everything, but you want to set up another machine, like an iPad or your partner's laptop, whatever it is, and look at the viewers, or the people, the attendees. Look at their perspective. What do they see? Like, are you backwards, or is the lighting weird? Are you cropped? What's going on? What's the audio like? How do your slides play? Because as soon as you're online, there is just inherently a delay. It can be an audio delay, sync with what you're saying, or just your slides. And if you have any kind of animations in your slides, there's a good chance they won't render properly. They'll just be jerky, or they won't work at all. And if you don't know that, you don't know that you're creating a bad experience that maybe doesn't communicate what you're trying to do. Because if your animation is telling a story that's important, but it's not happening, then you're failing. So you need to know those things. And if you have video and audio in your slides, there's a very good chance that it won't play, because whatever mic you're using is often plugged into the mic socket, the headphone socket, and it takes over that. It takes over the audio. So when your slides are playing a video, it has nowhere to go. The sound doesn't go anywhere. So you need to use software like VB Audio Cable is for Mac and PC, and I use what's it called? I'm running it right now. I should know that. It's called Loopback. Basically, it's virtual audio. It creates a virtual audio input. So you can say, I want my mic audio, and I want it from Keynote or PowerPoint, and maybe Chrome if I'm going to show something from YouTube. And it puts them all into a single input, and you choose that in the software in Zoom instead of your mic. So then everything goes through. You can balance them so your levels are fine. It changes everything, because I didn't used to know this, right? So I was giving a presentation, and I had like the Britney Spears, Janet Jackson mic like this. So, because another key, stand up. You have 10 times more energy when you stand up. Wave your arms around. Every time you gesticulate like this, it gives you more energy. Your voice changes, and people will get a better experience. But anyway, I'm doing this. I'm like having a great time. I got my clicker. You should have a clicker too. And I'm presenting. Everything's going great. And I have a chat window I can see. No, it's Twitter and the hashtag. And I could see people saying, we can't hear the video. We can't hear the video. I'm like, oh, because it's just my mic. So like, I need the sound to go in here. So basically I walked over and stuck my face down by the speakers in my laptop so it could go through, and everyone's just looking at my head or whatever. And overcoming technical problems is something that it's terrifying in the moment, but it will accelerate your skills and your confidence faster than almost anything else. Because when you learn to overcome those things, you just become more confident and you learn how to ad lib in the moment. And that's often where some of the special moments in a presentation come, when things aren't planned and they're surprising. And, one thing I like to do with the way I design presentations is have what I call a shit hits the fan moment. And when you're designing your presentation, you very purposely say, as you're plotting it out, go, here are the 5 moments where something most likely could go wrong. And what am I going to do about it? So in the moment, I've already practiced or prepared for if this doesn't work, or that doesn't play, or this goes wrong. So when it happens, you just appear like a total pro, because you're not going to go, oh, and freak out and freeze and forget what you want to say. It's a great way of designing preparedness into your talk.
I love that. And you actually shared a tip with me on Twitter that I loved, which was sometimes when I'm starting a presentation, I have a hard time like breathing and modulating my breathing at the beginning because I'm excited or I'm nervous or whatnot. And I'm just like holding my breath. And you said, put a slide, where you're just starting off that says, breathe, Natalie. And I thought that was just brilliant. You kind of like, exactly what's going to happen. So why not plan for it and remind yourself in the talk itself? So I think that is such a great tip.
If you do that, and over time you'll stop doing it. But just imagine like 3 times in your talk, there's a kind of a slide that just says, slow down, or, take a breath. The audience will find that funny. You can talk about it, whatever, and it'll help you. And then the muscle memory kind of happens, and this part in the talk, I need to slow down, and it'll just start to flow from there. So that's like if you're speaking too fast and things like that. Because you can't, I can get a little bit of breath sometimes, which is okay usually if you're on stage, but when you've got a mic right in your face, everyone hears you breathing. But there's another technique, so that's for if you're speaking fast, but if you're on a real stage, and so this isn't much about virtual presentations, but I'll just mention it quickly. A lot of people have happy feet, so they wander all over they pace around the stage because they're so nervous. A great practice technique for that is to basically put a bunch of t-shirts in a circle, and you have to stand inside them, or something harder, and you can feel it, and you're not allowed to move. You might still fidget, but you're not allowed to move outside of it. And you practice like that, it will control you a bit. Then you take it a step further, and you practice with your feet completely stationary. You're not allowed to move. Your legs are locked, and you can only do this. You don't want to do that, but it's a great way of training yourself to be okay without having that nervous movement.
I love that. I think I've definitely walked too far along the stage. So
get your steps in.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to, recording things, like obviously you have an amazing set that you have for recording at home.
Right.
When you're recording, for example, an online course or like a module or something that you're kind of training in, how do you go about designing those types of presentations? Like I know people have short attention spans online for video. Is that something you think about and kind of reverse engineer? How do you design some of that, online video content that you do?
Yeah, you definitely need it kind of in shorter things. Like the way I design my presentations, and this is the way I'm actually designing, I have my process that I'll be putting in my course for teaching people how to design presentations, but it's also a new product I'm going to build. But part of that is when you're planning your presentation, it works for a course. I'm creating a course right now. I'm using my process for that. It works for many things. You break it. The thing I'm building is called a pulse line, which is the heartbeat of your presentation or your course. And then each little section is called a pulse. So you're breaking it down to these things, and you define what's the narrative here, what's the performance that I'm going to use to, present that narrative, and then what slides am I going to use. That could, if it's a presentation or if you're on a course as well, you've probably got some visuals, and then you do that all the way through. And then instead of practicing the whole thing or recording this whole video, you just do the pulses. You do them one at a time. And you keep practicing that and recording it until it's really good. Because it's much easier. If you have, let's say, an hour-long course or a 45-minute keynote presentation, if you try and practice it all in one go, it's exhausting. You probably won't do it very many times. And there's a very good chance you'll be good at a couple of parts, and some parts will just be not very well rehearsed. And you'll have this ebb and flow of great, not so great, all the way through. But when you practice just these little segments individually, then it's kind of like how a comedian does their bits, right? They learn each single one, and they kind of lead in, have segues that go from one to the other, which you want in a talk and a course as well. You want a segue that takes you from one to the other. But when you practice it like that, then when you come to it, and this is for a presentation, when you get to that segment, you know how to do it. You've done it a lot of times as a short thing, and you can just deliver it much more easily. And you can put it anywhere else. You can put it in a different talk. You can add that to a different course, whatever it is, because you know this little bit much better than you know the whole. And only once you've done all of that, do you practice the whole thing. It's just a much better technique.
This is so brilliant. So thank you for sharing that. I feel like when we think of practicing, we think start at the beginning and then get to the end, right? That's how you're going to do it. But yeah, I love the idea of just practicing the pulses and getting really good at those and nailing them. And so when you are practicing, whether it's for an in-person talk or a presentation or a course, do you record yourself or, I know you mentioned you don't usually have an audience, but I feel like sometimes getting feedback on stuff is helpful. Yeah. So how's your feedback process for some of these things?
I will, most of the time, to be honest, I'm looking back at it when I'm editing. I'll do a lot of takes when I'm recording. I have a teleprompter that I, put in front of my DSLR so that I can, because if there's a long script, like I write a pretty heavy script for every part of the course because there's so much in there. You can't, if you try to remember it all, you're going to stumble so many times that it takes longer, the editing's harder. So having that is very useful. But I do find though, when I use that, I'm a little more stilted than if I'm kind of freely winging it. So you kind of want to mix those two together. But so I see a lot of myself in the editing and I hope, did I do another take? That one was terrible. Ideally, you do a few. So a good technique, if you are recording your course or a talk, because you should record your presentations so that when the event is over, you still have this piece of content, which is very valuable. You can sell it, repurpose it, whatever it doesn't disappear. But when you're recording your course, do what you were going to do to record it. And then at the end, because you'll have just gone through it and you'll have different ideas, just ad-lib a whole bunch of extra stuff. Redo certain parts, just kind of quickly, very loosely, add stuff, just kind of ad-lib and do some B-roll kind of stuff, because often it'll be a better delivery because it's looser or tighter because you just went through 5 takes on the way, but now you're fully kind of engaged and you remember everything and you can just like blah, blah, blah and get a really good take usually. Or you have a bunch of fun stuff to inject. I find that, if you just be a bit silly at the end, once it's done, going over some points or just have some fun, that is great content to put back inside your course that makes it a lot more enjoyable because it feels a lot more free form. And yeah, it's often some of the best things you say. You'll describe things in a better way. You have more fun with it. It's important to try and remember to have fun, because if you're having fun, the audience will have fun. If you're not having fun, your content better be really good because, getting through something that's a little dull is hard. A lot of conferences suck because there's bad talks, unfortunately. I mean, I'm glad there are some bad talks because otherwise I wouldn't have a job to help make them be better, but I feel bad for the audience when they have to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're totally right. Like infusing more fun in our courses. A lot of people don't finish the courses they purchase because, yeah, like it feels
Right.
like a slog sometimes to go through them, even though you want the result that was promised. And, sometimes it's
Yeah.
just too much to try to get through. So I love infusing more of that into your personality and the fun side of things. It's a great, great tip.
Hmm.
So one of the things I think people are always looking for as business owners is ways to kind of scale and reach more of an audience that they maybe don't have access to right now. And
Yeah.
obviously you've done that through speaking. So could you talk about, how people can kind of get started or maybe reach out to audiences and talks and conferences that they've never been approached about before, or kind of get themselves out to bigger stages essentially?
Yeah. Getting your first gig it can be very difficult. If you don't get invited because of your content, then you have to pitch. Pitching is hard. And I've spoken to a lot of conference organizers about this to ask them, well, what does someone have to do to get on your stage? Most of the time, they say, I won't put an unknown on my stage because people have paid for tickets. So you need to go for an event that is unpaid or very cheap, like start a meetup or something, or reach out to events that are free. There's some big events that are free because they make their revenue from sponsors or other mechanisms. So they'll be a much better target. But also the number one thing, I mean, I was part of running CTA Conf, Unbounce's conference, and I was on the speaker selection committee. And the first thing we look for is a video. If you don't have a video, you either have to have someone else singing your praises, or you need to have an amazing topic that's different to what other people are doing. So you're like, oh, we have a gap for this content. We need this person. But otherwise, you need a video. And if you don't have a video, how do you get a video? Chicken and egg. Well, go do something like a meetup and get it recorded. If you can't, do this and just get a recording so someone can see your personality. Make it a 3-minute video and practice it. Just do it a lot and edit it nicely and send that as part of your pitch, or put it on YouTube, or put it on a landing page, on your speaker page. As soon as you can, create a speaker landing page that is just about you, about the topics you talk about, and you've got to have a video on there. So just make it by whatever means you can, and that way that even if people can't find you, it's not ranking for something, you can send that in with your pitch, and you get over that very first hurdle of them. Because sometimes there are videos out there, we can't find it. You search really hard as an event organizer, and you just can't find them sometimes. So make it easier for them. So that's kind of how you can get your first one. But then after that, there's just this kind of cycle you get in the system but you have to be good, right? So the number one thing is you should care about being excellent. You should care about being original. And original is the most important thing, I think, for getting more gigs, because the way it works is you do a great talk, someone in the audience goes, wow, I need that person on my podcast. I need them to speak at my conference. I'm going to share this video when I get it with someone else because I know they'll need it at their conference. And you get this kind of knock-on effect happening. But if you are just recycling other people's stuff, like you're talking about a topic that everyone is talking about, that's not going to help you. You want to be original. And by that, it might be a topic that other people are talking about, but something I talk about is the original content mindset. So when you're creating content for your talks, photos, videos, do it yourself. If you need a photo of something, go and take it yourself. Stage it. Have a selfie doing something. Make them yourself, because then it shows the audience that you've put a lot of work in, and they can see you in it. And when I used to travel for speaking, when that was a thing, I would often, when I get to the location, I would go and do a lot of my content, the parts that needed to be localized. I do it in the hotel room there, or I do it in the town there, so people could recognize it, and they see that you put a lot of thought into it. And that's the kind of thing that will get you noticed. Now, I got a great example of this 3 days ago. Someone who signed up for Be The Keynote, a guy called Mike Hardenbrook. He gave a talk, and for his intro, this is pure original content mindset. what he did, he used cameo.com, where you pay not very much, 80 bucks, 100 bucks, whatever, to have a famous person, like one of your musical idols or something. They read a message for you. Sometimes it's a bit free form. You give them a little bit of guidance, but you could also give them a little bit of a script, which is hard because they only give you a few characters. So if you want to say more, put a link in there to a page that has your thing on it. And be very gracious about how you ask, because, not everyone wants to just read someone else's thing. They want to put their own spin on it. But anyway, it's fantastic. You had these two, it opened with this clip of someone from the news or something talking about these famous people, and then it switched to them, and they're talking about the event. They're speaking to the audience about that event. And that is just a fantastic way to make people go, wow, that is creative. That is different. And that's what'll get these referrals to your next gig and the one after that.
I love that personalization piece of that. It's so brilliant. Yeah, it's so cool. A great tip. And so that kind of brings me to the question, like how, just behind the scenes, like how much time do you usually put into designing a keynote talk and creating all the content and all of that? Because I feel like it's a lot of time, right?
It is. I mean, I was very fortunate at Unbounce in that it became my role. I wasn't managing people anymore. I wasn't in the marketing team. Well, I was, but I was more of an advisor, or I wrote content. When I became a speaker, that was my full-time job. So that was a luxury that I had a lot of time. And, I'm obsessive. So I would, and this is why I'm creating, this course and this product. It's basically reverse engineering how I make a talk. And I spent a lot of time on them. And then I got to the point, because a lot of people think, oh, how do I make a new presentation for every event? You don't. There are some people who can do that. They're very, very rare, and just know it's unnecessary. I got to the point where I was doing several, but then I tend to make I'm trying to come up with a new concept, like something that's completely new. So it takes a lot of thinking to come up with new concepts, new strategies, new processes and frameworks. So sometimes they would take me months. So I got to the point where I just do one. I do one new one every year. I debut at CTA Conf, and then I take it on the road, basically. And that way it gets better and better and better. So, often the organizer will say, oh, we need original content. I'm like, well, I don't have any. Well, I do. Your audience hasn't seen it yet. Only 400 people in 800 people in Vancouver have seen this. So, your gig in Romania, they haven't seen it. So don't worry, and it'll be better than it was then. If I try and do something new for you now, it won't be anywhere near as good. And when you do the same talk, just keep adding to it. You'll think of new ideas, you'll get new examples, and it just gets better and better over time. So yes, the answer is I spent a lot of time, but you can free up some pressure if, knowing that you can use it in multiple places. Now, you have to be established to be using one for a year, because you have to have a lot of invites to go lots of places. And when you're starting out, you do need to do more presentations. But over time, you'll build up several. And then when people ask you to speak, when you're pitching, you can help them. You can say, hey, you can choose from these. Mm-hmm. That's when you have a speaker page, you should say, these are the topics I can speak on. And usually they'll be the ones you've already done a talk for. And they can, if someone's going to invite you, you have a form for a request or something, and have them choose the one they want you to do. And that can help you get more referrals as well, actually. Whenever you do a gig, you should have a link to a landing page for resources for that specific talk, which has the slides that people are going to want to get. You have all the things you talked about, the links, any resources, but also have a form or something saying, hey, want me to speak at your event? Want me to be on your podcast? Let me know via this way. If you don't tell people that, if you don't ask, you're not going to get, so you're going to have all these people going to get your slides, and hopefully there'll be someone there that goes, oh, I didn't think we could get him or her, that's going to create some of that momentum as well. got sidetracked on the question there.
No, that's so useful. And it's really great to think about, like what happens once you kind of develop a portfolio of talks that you could kind of pull out when they make sense for that conference, or, if it's an audience that's already seen your other talk, you could kind of come up with the other one. So
exactly.
that's awesome.
And then you create a greatest hits talk over time, which is all your best content. For me, my purpose as a speaker is, I want to, in terms of the experience I want for the audience, I want them to laugh first and then be educated and inspired. But I want the laughter first because that's where I get my energy. If they're laughing, I get better and better all the time. So when you create a greatest hits talk, it's amazing because you go like, oh, that bit's hilarious, that bit's hilarious, that one's hilarious. And then you weave it together with some loose narrative, but you just have a lot of fun. The audience loves it, and I just love doing that. And when you know that it's an audience that you haven't been in front of before, that's when you pull that out. Because you'll get, when you have non-industry related things, so I talk about conversion optimization at Unbounce. If it's in an industry, say automotive or something, it's not the typical space, the marketing conferences, they won't have seen you. So if one of those things out of your sphere invites you, just do all your most fun stuff, your best stuff, whatever the things you most love doing. And that will, again, increase momentum because it'll be so good that you'll get referrals from that as well. So that's, little techniques like that for creating this momentum loop.
Yeah, these are incredible techniques. And I definitely can see the scaling side of that too, because you've got like lots of traction from those great results that you're already delivering from certain talks. So that's awesome. So I'd love for you to tell people more about Be The Keynote and kind of what's coming, how it works, and just a little bit more information if people want to go deeper on this.
Yeah, thank you. So BeTheKeynote.com, it's everything you need to become an exceptional public speaker and virtual presenter. So there's a lot of free content there. Sign up for free for the membership side. There's a lot of speaking tips in there and a lot of videos, some fun stuff in there. And what's coming is, so presentation experience design, that's the course I'm building, which is basically the reverse engineering of how I create a talk. Because I usually write on a giant whiteboard when I was at work how I design my talks. And I'd have a lot of speakers see that and go, you need to teach me how you do that. So then I unwrap this into this course. And it's all of the stuff before you do your slides, all of that as well, but it focuses on this part that nobody talks about, how you structure your concept, how you unpack it, how you break it down, some of it starts with choosing the experience you want the audience to have. But anyway, there's this whole process that then gets you prepared to do your slides. Because most people open PowerPoint or Keynote and they stare at this blank screen, just like writer's block on a white page, and they go, I don't know what to do. I'm going to use the default template. Don't do that. They're garbage. So when you're prepared, you're ready when you get to that point. Instead of just jumping, that's when you have a failed presentation or not a very good one. You start like that, your structure isn't clear, and you just have a random mishmash of stuff and it doesn't flow well. So I'll be teaching people how to do that. And of course, all of the slide design techniques that I have a lot of great techniques, hacks, workflow improvement methods that I'll teach people to. And I'll be releasing a software product, which does all of this stuff. And we'll be launching Gig Finder, which will be a database of close to 1,000 events who are actively searching for speakers. So instead of just trying to find gigs that need speakers or have an open call for speakers, this will have a whole bunch of them all around the world, lots of virtual and in person. So I'm hoping that will just be an amazing way for people to find gigs more easily. And you're talking about scaling. Because of COVID, everything went online, and that's how you scale. When you have to travel somewhere, that doesn't scale. It's a lot of time, a lot of cost, a lot of exhaustion. But if you're doing online presentations, you can just rock them out very quickly, and it is the best way to scale.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's one of those silver linings of, of everything going virtual,
Yeah,
really, is being able to do
totally.
that. And so one of the things that you said really spoke to me, which is around, how you want people to feel and what kind of experience you want them to have during your presentation, your
Hmm.
talk. And it's one thing that I always said, which is I don't send marketing emails, I send feelings. And I feel like it's the same,
Nice.
right? When you're having this talk or this presentation, for you, it seems like you want people to laugh first, right? But maybe
Yep.
not throughout the entire thing. Maybe you have those kind of ups and downs and other things that are more serious that you want them to kind of take home. So how do
Yeah.
you kind of design some of that, or like how do you start thinking about that? And obviously your course will explain a lot more
It,
in
it, it
detail,
will
but
do that,
yeah.
yeah. But basically, as I map out my talk going through the different sections, what you do, and this is the experience design portion of this, where you decide what are the things that define the experience I want the audience to have. So for me, funny moments, actionable moments, tweetable moments, because I want people to take photos of my slides and share them, um, and occasional meaningful moment. So then you purposefully design those experiences in there. And once you've gone through your planning it, you can step back and go, okay, funny, 20-minute gap with no humor. I need to solve that problem. So, and someone asked me, what, you purposely inject something? Yes, you just deliberately put in what you want the experience to be right there. Find a way. So then you're going to have that consistency because it's good for the audience and it's good for you. Whatever you get the energy from, make sure there's a good cadence of when they appear so that you keep getting that bump of energy. You can also design in different things. You can design in things to do with volume and pace, because, and this is especially true for online, everyone gets distracted. They're doing something else. They may be listening to you and they may be watching you if they have two screens or something, but they're going to be doing something else most likely. So you want to work on bringing them back to you. And there's several ways you can do that. Audio contrast is one of the best, because you're talking, da, 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 da. And then if you go, yeah, but now I'm talking about something really serious, or it's a secret, people are going to go, why did that change? And they'll get back to you. Or you can put the volume up, but to do that, you have to, you just shout off, Mike, I'm so pissed off right now, right? You can do that. Comedians do that, or on podcasts. You can tell I'm annoyed. You can tell there's a lot of volume, but you didn't get a lot of volume, I hope. So you don't blow people's ears when they're listening in headphones, but you give them the audio contrast that makes them pay attention. And that again, and you can, and these are the experiences, you can deliver an experience in a certain way. If you want to deliver a meaningful moment, maybe it's a personal anecdote, a story, a painful story, or something emotional. The way you want to do that is, well, you can slow down and you can lower your voice, or just slowing down will bring people back to you again because you've changed the tempo. And when you're delivering something like this, have a blank black slide, because then all of the attention on you. This works particularly well in a live environment. So there's a big screen, it's very bright. As soon as it goes black, it's like everything is looking at you, not at that, and it just, you draw people towards you when you do that. So each of these types of experience you can design in either through performance or through slide design. A tweetable moment, you have something, you don't need to put your Twitter handle on every page. Have it on the really important one that is your epic process diagram, or something really funny or just meaningful, whatever it is on there, and have your Twitter handle and the hashtag right there, and give people a great way of getting better and understanding people's motivations is when you're giving a talk. Can't do this online, unfortunately. Watch people. So you get to certain slides. If people start pulling out their phones, you're like, oh, this is a good slide. This is something that's shareable. Make sure that's one of your tweetable moments, or whatever venue you use, that audience tends to use for sharing things. But when you see that, pause a little while. Let people take the photo. Because otherwise, if you skip past it, you'll see people going, or to go, I missed it. And you'll hear them going, I missed it. Can you go back? Even if it's a big room, you'll hear them doing that. So, when you see those moments happening, just kind of run with it. and let people have, that moment. And for funny moments, I mean, you just be funny, but that's very difficult. If you're not a funny person, not everybody is, then be honest with yourself. That's not one of your experience design moments. You should then lean on what you're really good at. If you're really good at making people cry because you deliver emotion very well, lean on that. If you're great at diagrams, lean on that. Whatever your strength is, do more of that because people will appreciate that aspect. Don't try to be someone you're not. There's nothing worse if you want people to laugh when they don't laugh. Because it just deflates you and it's like, oh, I know. And, the worst thing you can do then is some speakers do this. It's a bad technique. They get a bit annoyed and they say like, oh, come on, that's funny. Or like, why aren't you laughing? I'm like, they're not laughing because you're not funny. Don't blame the audience for your bad humor. It's never the audience's fault. It's always your fault. I forgot the question.
Yeah, this is super, super helpful. Yeah, and I love that. Just like leaning in on what you're good at, and also listening to that feedback. Obviously, it's harder online, but I think if you're doing in person, it's great to have. You can kind of gauge the audience and how things are landing. So that's really helpful.
And it helps having the physical experience to lean on when you do virtual. If you're starting with virtual, it's a bit tougher. Because when you have done it live, you can use your memories to like visualization is a great technique. Athletes do it. I do it. I used to do it a lot. The day before when I'm practicing, I visualize myself on the stage. When I do this, when this slides up, I'm walking that way. I'm turning, I'm pointing. I know exactly where the thing is on the screen. I'm doing this. So when you get there, you've already done it. It's kind of in your head. So when you have these things, if you've given the talk before, you can just visualize this invisible audience, pretend they're laughing, pretend they're, ask people, I need, raise your hands, raise your virtual hands and do this. I want you to do it right now. Raise your hand if you prefer toilet paper this way or that way. Engage the audience, do funny polls, but ask them to do things. Don't expect them to do it on their own. Because people will do it and you can visualize it. Okay, I can see 70% of people are putting their hand up now. Okay, and then they're doing this and they're laughing now. And that will give you some energy because they are an invisible audience and you have to use your imagination.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to engage people online for sure, to say like, has this ever happened to you? Type yes in the chat, that kind of stuff to really get them, participating and not just being a passive observer, essentially.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the course that you're creating, and obviously Be The Keynote, and how you found AccessAlly and decided to use it for the things that you're creating now.
I was using a different platform that I didn't like, and it's very complicated. I mean, I have a development background. I was a coder 20 years ago. So I could get my code is terrible now, but I could fumble my way through it, but it was very technical and there was a very good chance it was going to break. And I was just using my website and I had all of the membership stuff merged in with that. And I was just using millions of rules and different things to make it accessible or not. And it was just a nightmare. So I'm like, wow, how can I split this up? And then I searched for, should you have your membership site on a subdomain? And that's when I found an AccessAlly blog post that was wonderfully opinionated. It just said, no, don't do that. And then here's why. And I was like, great. All I want was an answer, yes or no. I just want someone with experience to tell me the best thing to do. So then I was like, oh, this is great advice. So who are these people? Oh, they have, a WordPress thing for this. That's amazing. I was using a different platform as well. That's disconnected. It's not configurable. This way I can do everything I do on WordPress and build this all in. And it changed everything. It was massive. And I tweeted you immediately about how happy I was about the onboarding process for getting it set up. Was fantastic. And yeah, it's an amazing platform. It's so much better than anything else I was trying. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. And what are some of the features or aspects of AccessAlly that you've enjoyed using so far? Because I always like to know that too.
Yeah, definitely the Progress Ally stuff stuff for doing the course is great. Just being able to have those checklist items for people to progress. And I love how dynamic it is. You have like, this is part 4 of the course, whatever, and here are the 5, I forget the terminology, things you have to
objectives.
Do. Objectives, to get past this part. And, it can be different things. It can be just, you've done this, you click it, but then it updates, live. And the best part of it is, because it's a lot of video you have, right? I use Wistia. And you can set it up that if they watch to 2 minutes and 45 seconds, that's completion for you. That's what you want them to at least achieve. You can say the whole thing, or you can say that. Because maybe you have this amazing piece of content that people have to see, and it's kind of right there. You can stick it there. And then the objective you'll just see it. It's playing, doop, the little check mark comes off. It's just so smooth. So on that side. And then on the main AccessAlly side, it was just how easy it was to kind of get all the rules set up. And the onboarding, I had a bad sign-up process initially for Be The Keynote, and a few of my friends critiqued it and went, this is a pain in the ass, the way you've got this. I'm like, I know. And then again, I found on your site that you have this auto login. So as soon as they've registered, they still have to opt in and say yes, yes, yes. But you have this auto login kind of feature that just for that session, it throws them in. So they're immediately in the membership environment. They're like, okay, great. I asked for it. I've got it. This is awesome. Later on, they'll go check their email and they'll like confirm and everything, but they got straight in. That's a fantastic flow. So yeah, I love that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. It's always just cool to see which aspects of the software people are finding useful. Mm-hmm. So thank you for sharing that. All right, so we're almost at the end. So what kind of one takeaway or key thing that you want people to take from this session if they want to do more speaking, rock their online presentations? Obviously, go sign up and check out the free Be The Keynote stuff. And when the course comes out, that's a huge one. But any kind of takeaway or last message you want to share?
Yes, definitely do that. I think it's just doing little things at a time. Just commit to doing little improvements. So when you're setting up, like you said, I've got this fancy background. This took me a long time to get right. Simple things. Try not to have a straight on position. If you've got a white blank wall or whatever, don't do that. Turn it a little bit. As soon as you have this kind of dynamic shape, it looks better. Put a bit of light in the background. I'm just going to throw out lighting tips. You want to try and have it so the lighting between you and the wall is as dark as possible. You have lighting on you and you have an accent light back there. That's how you create a good experience. When everything's lit up and it's all just too balanced, doesn't look good. So just find these little things. Lighting can be cheap. Go to Wistia.com. Look for their $99 or what I set up for how to get a great lighting setup for $100. There's lots of stuff you can do cheaply that's awesome. Try makeup, right? Guys, get over it. Blotting paper, you can see a little bit. It takes the oil off your face, and then setting powder. It just kind of gives you a matte finish so you're not shiny crazy in the light. Little things like that just go a long way to creating a better experience. Don't use a Zoom background. Just work on little improvements to your own background, because a Zoom background's fine for a meeting. It's not professional for a talk.
Oh, this was so amazing. I love how it's like super practical, but also like, hey, just, work with what you have and improve it from there. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for being here with us, Oli. I can't wait to share this with even more people in the Seamless Scaling series. And this was great.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Okay, so we're no longer streaming. I'll stop the recording.